تبدأ الرحلة.
Yes, good evening and welcome to Talk to Aviation Expert Program on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. My name is Barry Johnson, and this program usually comes to you every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. on air and online. Today happens to be 13th of January 2024. This program is brought to you by Fly On Time Aviation Sciences Academy. And of course, Fly On Time Aviation Sciences Academy is located next to Mobile Roundabout. It's inside Techno Building, the third floor. Well, in today's edition of the program, we are going to look into a different topic, which is transportation of special categories of passengers by air. We are going to be focusing on passengers traveling with infants and children, and also unaccompanied children, passengers with reduced mobility, passengers on stretchers, and also passengers with injuries or illness, and lastly, restricted passengers. These are all the areas that we are going to be discussing. And of course, to shed more lights on the topic, we have Caesar Gubang. My co-host is back to the studio. Yes, and for your information, Caesar Gubang, he is the managing director of Fly On Time Aviation Sciences Academy, and he's also my co-host in the studio. So Caesar, Happy New Year and welcome back to the program.
Happy New Year and good evening. And also good evening to those watching us live on Facebook and listening us on the radio. I would like to say Happy New Year, and I wish them a healthy and happiest year.
Okay.
2024.
Right. Yes, Caesar. It's good to have you back in the program. As we go straight to our topic of discussion, let's start with, if you can tell us briefly, how a special category of passengers can be transported by air, especially looking at passengers traveling with infants and also children.
Okay. Special categories of passengers, by definitions, those are passengers that require special attentions, assistance, and some considerations, okay, when transporting by air, or sometimes required special restraining equipments or devices to lift them from ground to the aircraft. And those passengers, according to the International Civil Aviation Organization and also the international trade organizations like IATA, they came up with some classification of those passengers.
Yes.
And they say the special categories of passengers, those are passengers like passengers traveling with infants, and they travel with children, and also those unaccompanied children.
Yes.
Okay, children that's from the year of 2 years but doesn't turn to the year of 13 years. It means from the year of 2 years to 12 years.
Yes.
And also some passenger with reduced mobility. Will be looking into passengers who are blind, passengers who require a wheelchair. They cannot able to walk alone until boarding the aircraft. Passengers who are not listening, who are deaf totally.
Yes.
Okay. And there is some also categories of passengers which we call them the restricted passengers, like the prisoners, okay, and passengers, deportees. And there is some passengers also we call the inadmissible passengers. And those kind of passengers, we call them restricted because there is some certain requirement or certain measures that they need to meet so that they can be accepted on board the aircraft. Yeah.
Okay, and also, of course, we are still in the infants, children, and also the unaccompanied children. So, how are they handled? This type of passengers, like passengers with infants, with children, and unaccompanied children.
Excellent. And this is what I, during my experience in aviations, I saw most of passengers sometimes traveling to accompany their children for schooling abroad, because they don't have an idea that unaccompanied child, which is from the year of 2 years, let me say, doesn't turn the 13 years or until 12, they don't know that the airline can able to take the responsibility of that unaccompanied children.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Always depends on the number of required infants on board, because there is some type of aircrafts which are only designed for limiting the number of infants on board. Example, we cannot able to take more than, let me say, or some type of aircraft cannot take more than 5 infants on board.
Yes.
Because in term of emergency, or in case of emergency, there is no availability for the oxygen masks for that passengers, because the manufacturers of the airlines manufacturers, they design aircraft not to focus on infants but focus on adults.
Yes.
That's why always there is some restriction here, and to guarantee the safety of these passengers on board or the infants on board depend on the number, and to make sure that on board the cabin crew, they are responsible of the safety of these children and infants on board, assisting them in time of emergency, assisting them in fastening their seat belt, unfastening their seat belt, assisting them in case they need to use the LAF, which is the lavatories, assisting them with delivering for them the meals, okay, and making sure that, example, like the unaccompanied children, the responsibility started from ground, where the family of that unaccompanied children must inform upon booking of the ticket that we have a child not reaching 13 years or is still at the age of 12 years or is a child. For us in aviation, we call it unaccompanied children. Okay, the airline can accept that passenger, that child, and take full responsibility from the time of the checking in until this passenger or this child board the aircraft. And on board of the aircraft, it will be assigned one cabin crew to take care of that unaccompanied child. And as I say earlier, all those type of assistance can be delivered for that child, until upon arrival the point of destinations, where the cabin crew will also hand over that child to the representative of the airlines, and the representative of airline must make sure that they hand over the child to the representative or the family representative at the point of destination. But the family, from the point where the aircraft is taking off, cannot leave the airport unless half of the flight time is covered, because we don't know what will happen. Maybe an emergency will happen.
Yes.
When they are coming back, they will not know where they can hand over the child. That's why sometimes it's good for them to wait until to make sure that this aircraft already departed and covered half of the trip. Then they will be moving home.
Yes.
Yeah. This is how they always take care of those unaccompanied children or unaccompanied infants on board.
Okay.
Assign cabin crew to take care of those infants and child in terms of emergency.
Okay. All right. Now moving on to another category of passengers. These are the passengers with stretchers. So what measures do you think should be put in place to facilitate the transportation of passengers on stretchers to ensure their comfort and safety? Yeah.
The measure is clearly defined by the International Civil Aviation Organizations, or sometimes we call it the national authorities, like the civil aviations of each country or each state. And also there is some guidelines from IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association. Those bodies, they come up with all those measures for the airlines just to implement. Okay.
Yes.
Example, the measures that they need to put in place before we transport, or the airline transport the stretcher case, there will be a need of flow of informations. At least can be 48 hours or minimum 72 hours, because those stretchers, they are not equipped with the aircraft. they need to be installed on the aircraft.
Yes.
That's why once there is information very clear that, let's say, from point A to point B, or from a certain airport, that there is a stretcher passenger, when the information is very clear, then they will install what? They will install the stretcher. Okay. 2, they need to make sure that is this stretcher passengers accompanied by the doctor, which is very important for us.
Yes.
Because sometimes the situation required an assistant or attentions, or we call it the medical attentions,
Yes.
which the cabin crew on board cannot handle that kind of situations. Okay, that's why if there is a medical doctor accompany also the passengers on a stretcher, then also the information will be passed. Okay. 3, the operator needs to know what are the challenges of that passengers, the situation or the condition of that passengers. Is that condition can be able to allow these passengers to travel from point A to point B safely without any problem? That's why we say the air operators always focusing on the safety of that passengers. If the situation cannot allow it, because ground is not like the air,
Yes.
then sometimes they will communicate with them in a polite way that the situation of this passenger cannot be allowed to be flow from point A to point B. That's why sometimes they did something called the ambul aircrafts, which is, or medical aircrafts that will be just come and take that passengers, because that aircraft is equipped with all the medical facilities in case of any changes happen on board that aircraft, or on board the aircraft or in the air with the passenger. The doctors on board can able to handle the situation, and also the facilities that are equipped on that aircraft can able to help that passengers.
Yes.
Those are the way how they always focus on the safety of the stretcher passengers, and also the way they communicate in a polite way to that to that passengers.
Yes. Earlier you mentioned about passengers with illness, and also, of course, also passengers with injuries. So, is there any do airlines provide like medical support for the passengers with illnesses or injuries on board, or how are they handled, this category of passengers?
Okay, airline provide facilities, okay, not support. They provide facilities, and those kind of facilities upon request.
Okay.
Upon request, because on board those facilities are not there. Okay, and those facilities sometimes there be the example, there will be first aid, okay, and the doctor kits will be on board.
Yes.
But need someone that can able to use, because example like cabin crew cannot use the doctor kits. There is doctor kits on board. Okay, but if there is a clear information to the operator or to the airlines that we have a patient living on this date, okay, and this patient must require oxygen oxygen on board, or this passenger must require any medical facilities on board, the airline can able to provide that. Okay. But required an assistant that can able to assist that passengers. To the operator or the airline can assess also the risk of that passengers. Is this illness okay with the flight? That's why sometimes if there is any doubt, they will require from the family of the patient to get an approval from the doctor, which is we call it the fit to fly. The doctor will assess the situation of that passengers, and with the time of the flight, can these passengers with that situation or that conditions or the illness that he's suffering from can reach him to the area or to the point where this is going, to the airport where he's traveling. Okay, then doctors always assess it, and give us a green line, or give to the airlines a green line that the situation of the passengers, it's okay and fit to fly. Okay, that's why sometimes there is some medical forms that must be requested from the airline, that to be filled by the doctor and to be sent back to the airline in order also to assess, is this information really correct? Because see, here the main focus of the airline is the safety of the passengers. It's not
Yes.
about the business, it's not about the commercial, it's not about just to take the money for the ticket. No,
Yes.
it's focusing here, is this information really correct? Because also those airlines, they have their doctors can assess the situation of the passengers. Sometimes it will reach to the extent they will reject. Even if the doctor say this passenger is fit to fly, sometimes they will reject because there is doubt somewhere. And that's why sometimes most of airline respect a medical report from the public, we call it the public center or the public hospital, which is belong to the government.
Yes.
In our case is Juba Teaching Hospital, which if the medical report always required from the government hospitals.
Hospital, yes.
Yeah. Those are the measures, or those are the procedures that must be done earlier before accepting of the passengers. Sometimes it will reach to the extent barrier. The airlines can visit the patient in the hospital, where they can discuss with the medical doctor or with the doctor, and the doctor can explain for them more. This is here we are focusing on the safety.
Yes.
Okay, and they will come to the clue with the doctor, because the airline also can explain what are the situation that the patient can face in the air, vibrations, turbulence. Then the doctor also can see the environment plus the situation of this patient. Then they will come up with a good decisions.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned a medical report, but are there any other restrictions or guidelines for passengers with specific medical conditions, and how is it communicated to the passenger? Of course, you mentioned sometimes the airline can send someone to the hospital to talk to the doctor, but what other restrictions are there apart from the medical report?
Apart from the medical report, also the health of the passengers. Sometimes there is passengers with the injuries but bad smelling. Okay. Passenger with the injuries but bad smelling. Okay. Sometimes the airline can restrict that passengers not to board the aircraft. Yeah. He or she is healthy, but the injuries stage is now, it's worse on board that aircraft, which can not it's not good for the comfortability of the other passengers. Okay, and sometimes in terms of health wise, because the ventilation on board that aircraft, it's not like the one you can open the window and get the other fresh air.
Yes.
Okay, those are the restrictions sometimes airline can reject. Secondly, sometimes we call them the hidden disabilities. They are suffering of something. Okay, let me say mental, or we call it the cognitive disabilities. Someone with mental situation or mental conditions, which through the assess can be risk to the safety of the passengers on board. Someone just crying, screaming, and doesn't want to sit down, want to touch any passengers on board. Sometimes airline can able to reject that kind of passengers unless there is some certain requirement or certain support from the doctors to assist those passengers to complete its flight. The airline doesn't have any problem, but with that situation they can also reject apart, even if you bring all your support document that this passenger is fit to fly, but that situations is against the safety of the flight. Yes. And also against the safety of the rest of the passengers on board. Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's look as well into passengers with like what assistance is provided for passengers who require like a special seating arrangement due to medical or mobility reasons?
Yeah, allocation of the seats is part of the requirement for assisting the passengers with reduced mobilities.
Yes,
it's part of the arrangement. It's not the passengers is not the one to request, but already it's a setup. Once we know that, or once the airlines know that this is the stretcher case, they know where they can install the stretcher case. They know where they can install the stretcher, and they know where the doctor can sit. And mostly, they don't allow to put those kind of passengers with the reduced mobilities or the illness or on the emergency exit. This is the only restriction. They cannot put them on the on the emergency exit. Okay, but any other seat allocation, it can be allocated with them, except the emergency exit, because those kind of passengers, they cannot help in terms of the emergencies. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Caesar. If you have just tuned in, or you're just watching us live on Facebook, you are listening to Talk to Aviation Expert Program on iRadio, and my name is Barry Johnson, and we also have Caesar Gubang Mikhaya, my co-host here. Today, we are looking at transportation of special categories of passengers by air, and we are focusing on passengers traveling with infants and children, and accompanied children, passengers with reduced mobility, passengers on stretchers, passengers with injuries or illness, and of course the restricted passengers. We're going to go for a short commercial break, and then when we get back, we will continue with our topic of discussion. Stay tuned.
أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران بيقدم لك البرنامج الإذاعي اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران. البرنامج ده بيزودك بكل المعلومات المهمة واللي انت بتحتاج تعرفه عن مجال الطيران. اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران بيجيكم كل يوم السبت الساعة 3 بالمساء على الهواء وعلى الإنترنت فقط على أي راديو. عينك على جنوب السودان. أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران، حيث تبدأ الرحلة.
Okay, welcome back from that short commercial break, and we are continuing with our discussion, which is transportation of special categories of passengers by air. Yes, Caesar, also looking at passengers who require oxygen support. So what arrangements are in place for passengers requiring oxygen support or other medical equipment during the flight? I understand you mentioned that there can be an aircraft, a medical aircraft that has all the medical facilities, but looking at the non-medical aircraft, what arrangements do they put in place for passengers who require oxygen support or any other medical equipment during the flight?
Yeah, everything is possible once the communication is in a good time. As I said it before, if there is any special categories of passengers that will be travel with that aircrafts or that company, communication is very important. Let me say the relatives or the relatives of the patients must communicate to the airlines upon booking of the ticket and tell them exactly, we have a passenger suffering of a situation A, B, C, D. And this kind of situation of the passengers will require oxygen on board. Okay? Which also the airlines can require a medical report, as I say it before. A medical report for the confirmations.
Yes.
Because sometimes I will just come and tell you that this passenger required oxygen.
Oxygen, yeah.
But how can I guarantee that? Okay? But if it's from the doctor itself, it will be something official. Okay, and always the communication, as I said, it will be in a good time, not less than 72 hours or 48 hours.
Yes.
So that they can able to arrange the oxygen for that patient. And we will see that patient, is it a patient that can sit on the seat or a patient that can lie down? Because if a patient that can be lying down cannot able to sit, Also, they must request for the stretcher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's also look at, there are passengers with pre-existing conditions that are already there. So, what procedures are in place to handle medical emergencies during a flight for passengers with pre-existing conditions?
Yeah. As I said it before, situation can happen.
Yes.
On board, okay, and depend on the cabin crew experience and the facilities on board. Okay, cabin crew, their responsibility is just to perform the first aid, only to perform the first aid. And if this situation now is beyond their capabilities, then there will be a PA, which is a public announcement on board the aircraft.
Yes.
Requesting all the passengers on board, if there is a doctor, okay, on board, or any medical assistant on board, okay. If that passenger is lucky and there is really a doctor on board, as I say earlier, there is a doctor kits on board, but must not be used by the cabin crew, must be used by the doctor, the professional doctor.
Yes.
Let me say someone show up and say, yeah, I'm a doctor, but the cabin crew also cannot allow him to use those medical kits or to start rushing to the passenger before identify himself or herself.
Yes.
You need to identify yourself that you are a really doctor, because that's why they ask most of doctors are allowed to move with their IDs wherever they go.
Yes.
For the identifications. Once he or she identify himself or herself to the cabin crew, then the cabin crew will accept the doctor to use the kits and assist the passengers.
Yes.
Let me say the situation is now going to the worst, or let me say there is no doctor on board, or there is no any medical assistant on board, only the cabin crew, and they cannot able to handle, the aircraft must divert to a maybe back to the airport where they take off, or they took off, or to an emergency airport. This is why sometimes flights are interrupted like that. That's why all those requirements, because of the safety of that, only passengers. In case there is no any medical assistant, there is no any doctor on board, the aircraft might divert back to the airport where it's took off or take off, or to any nearest airport for the assistance of that passengers.
Okay. Yeah. In the beginning of the program, you talked about deaf passengers or blind, but let's look generally at passengers with disability, either it is physical disability or not. So how are they handled, and how are some of the things communicated to them? How are persons with disability handled on a flight?
Generally, any passenger with disability, and I will repeat, I say depend on the kind of the disabilities.
Yes.
Because the kind of disabilities depend on also the equipment that, or the devices that we are going to, or the airline is going to provide for that disabilities. Okay, let's take an example with passenger that cannot walk. Maybe it can require a wheelchair.
Yes.
Which automatically, or some passengers, they come already with their own wheelchair from the check-in counter. Okay, let me say just that passenger maybe is a H passenger, someone who cannot able to sustain alone, needs some assistance.
Yes.
That one will be a full responsibility of the airlines, from ground until on board, from board until to the point where he's traveling or she's traveling. And they will provide all the facilities for that passengers, taking care of that passengers from the terminal until to the aircraft, and from the aircraft all necessary movement of that passengers to go to use the laboratory or the services that will be delivered to him or her on board, the fasten and unfasten of the seat belt in term of emergency. All those kind of assistance must be delivered for that passengers. Okay, and also the passenger must be or let me say the seat of the passenger must be allocated, or where the access of the cabin crew is easy for that passengers. Okay, or in the eye of that cabin crew. And also they will assign one cabin crew in order to take care of that passengers until to the point of destination, where the cabin crew will hand over to the staff on ground where they can able to handle. And there is some passenger that can not able to move through the passenger stair or the bridge.
Yes.
That's why there's some special type of equipment that can be provide for those kind of passengers, so that can be lifting them from ground to the aircraft, or we call them sometimes the medical lift equipment. And those are the supports, those are the kind of assistance that is a must for the airlines to provide to those kind of passengers with disability. And it varies from the type of disabilities, and it varies from the type of assistance that the disability or passenger with reduced mobility required.
Okay. All right. Let's also look into pregnant passengers, and I would love you to emphasize on this so much. First, we would love to know which month of pregnancy is a pregnant woman allowed to travel, and also how can airlines ensure the comfort and safety of pregnant passengers during their journey?
Yeah. Okay, that is a very fantastic questions, and we hope one day to have also a full topic about the pregnancy and allowed also those women to call.
Yes.
And for now, I will say, there's a possibility of miscarriage for the early stages of the pregnancy.
Yes.
Yeah, and depend on the flight hours also. And it is not only on the flight, but sometimes people says, or doctor says, the early stages of pregnancy, let me say from 1 month to 3 months, is sometimes very sensitive. The woman cannot stress herself, the woman cannot carry things which are heavy, the woman cannot need a full rest. Okay, same situation in the air. The air, there is vibrations in the air, there is turbulence in the air. You will feel you in something that is like a tube, okay, which you will feel that the pressure, there is a pressure, and those kind of pressure, vibrations and turbulence, it can disturb that baby,
Yes.
especially in the early ages. That's why sometimes transparency is very important for us. An example, my advice for those women in the early ages, transparency is very important. Some are lying sometimes, but all those standards or all those procedures, because of her safety and the safety of the baby, okay, the more they are transparency, the more the airline can able to help them. It's not about rejecting you from flight, no, it's because of your situations, okay, that cannot be allowed for this time, but it's not mean that you cannot fly. But any things above 4 months to 6 months, those we call them the green lines. Green lines, okay, because it's normal, okay, but sometimes it depend on the flying hours. You see, sometimes flight of 7 hours, someone can be flying of 7 hours, 10 hours. Let me say you are taking off from an area where the flight time will be like 10 hours, 7 hours. That's why sometimes cabin crew pay attention for them a lot. Ask them to move, to walk inside the aircraft, not to sit the whole time of the flight.
Yes.
Ask them to do some exercising, pay close attention for them. Because also sitting a lot and long time of flight, it can affect them too.
Yes.
Okay, those are the time that sometimes we call it the safe time. Okay, but some are critical in the stage or in the month of 7 months. Sometimes critical. There's a possibility of delivery. Okay, but how can we rescue that baby? Because it's still not finished 9 months.
Yes.
That's why sometimes it's little bit very difficult here. That's why airlines sometimes required an approval. It's not an approval, but medical clearance from the doctor. Okay. And once we get that, or the airlines receive that, the clearance, the medical clearance, also they will assess with some minor security questions, asking, are you really in your 7 month, or are you really in your 8 month, or are you really in your 9th month. Through those questions, the airlines agents can able to realize if it's a true informations or it's a false informations. Also, there is decision need to make here. Okay, those are the situation with the pregnancy women.
Yes, you talked about transparency. So, are there cases where it's the passenger who does not reveal to the airline that she's pregnant at this month? And also, are there situations maybe that passenger does not know that she's pregnant, and
Okay.
she's and she's traveling?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
During my time when I'm working as a check-in agent, we face a lot of difficulties with those kind of passengers.
Yes,
They will come, you see she's pregnant, but she doesn't holding even one single paper.
that shows.
It does shows that
she's pregnant.
she's pregnant, but doesn't show which month she is now.
A document.
Yeah,
from the
document.
hospital.
Yeah, or sometimes we call it the follow-up document. Okay, but she will say, "I'm 2 months, I'm 1 month, I'm 5 months, I'm 6 months." But for us, this is a doubt. We need something that can prove when did you conceive that baby, and until the time that you want to travel, what is the age of that baby now?
Yes.
Inside your stomach. Okay, those are the challenges that sometimes we are facing with certain kind of passengers. That's why it's a good question that you bring up. Sometimes you cannot realize pregnancy. Seriously,
Yeah.
depend on the body. We call it the morphology, the body of the women of the women's. Okay, you cannot realize. Sometimes she will say, "I'm in my 4th month," but she's in 9 months. Okay, but what always rescue us is the follow-up documents, and the medical clearance. That's why it's better for them. That's why I say transparency. Why? Even if they don't talk, but let them show us those medical reports, the follow-up, because it can be very clear there. And the airlines, they have experts, they have doctors.
Yes.
Even the cabin crew are trained of that. They can able to realize the women, they can able to imagine this stage of pregnancy. Okay, that's why sometimes it will reach to the extent they are being rejected from flight, because there is no transparency and you don't have something to prove that what you are talking to the airlines is true. Yeah, those are the
Okay.
issues. Yeah, this is what I mean by the transparency here.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Caesar. And also, are there any specific guidelines for transporting passengers with infectious diseases, and how is it communicated to the passengers and the crew that is on board?
That's why sometimes the medical reports helps a lot, because you will see someone coughing, but a passenger can tell you that or can tell to the airline that this is I just have a cough, but it's a tuberculosis. Okay, that's why always the airlines agent, they have the sense of discovering such kind of diseases. Okay,
If it's a normal cough,
if it's a normal cough or it's not a normal cough.
Yes.
That's why if there is any doubt, automatically they will say, "May I have a document? Have you met a doctor, and how long does it take, and what happened if you are coughing?" Those kind of questions. But if there is a doubt, automatically the airline can say, "You must bring something to prove from doctor, so that at least we can allow you to board the aircraft," because
Yes.
those kind of diseases, they are very dangerous with the other passengers. Example like COVID-19. COVID-19, it's a very dangerous disease. That's why you see the measures that the World Health Organization came up with help a lot, minimizing, especially in the field of aviation.
Yes.
It's minimizing, because you are just sitting in one close object, and everything is inside there. If you have COVID, it means these people all have COVID.
Yes.
Okay, those are, and it's a very sensitive or those passengers, we call those are the sensitive passengers for us, for the airlines. Okay, that's why medical requirement, medical clearance is very important. Important for such kind of passengers. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the restricted passengers. You mentioned that these are the prisoners. So how are they? How are this category of passengers handled on board?
Yeah. Also, those are let me say, the restricted passengers, because they are sensitive passengers, they are against the safety of the flight. They will do whatever they want to do. Let me take an example: a prisoners. Maybe he was being under the custody of other state, and they are being required by the another state, okay, or the home state, to bring the prisoner back home.
Yes.
Okay. Here there is a lot of process must be taken, or there are lots of measures must be taken, which is within the law enforcement, the airport authority, and the airline itself. There is a communications must be flown between these three channels, okay, and all those information is all through the assessment. Is this passenger going with the escort, or this passenger is not going with the escort? Okay, if this passenger not going with the escort, what are the cases of these passengers? Because sometimes maybe it's not going with the escort. Example, a passengers, we call them inert, or sometimes we call them inadmissible passengers. Passengers that travel from point A, reaching the destination, he have problem with visas. Yeah, they reject him to enter the country. That one is normal. It will be handled, because it doesn't require escort. But still, the airline will know how to allocate the seat for them. Such kind of passengers, always the allocation of the seats is always at the rear back, behind the passengers. Okay. But the passenger, like prisoners, or sometimes we call deportees. Deportees, someone enter the country, but you do a lot of chaos, you do a lot of crimes in that country, and that country, they want to deport you back where you come from. Okay. Those kind of passenger, they have negative emotions, because first of all, they are not happy. They can do whatever they want to do for that aircraft. Okay. That's why always risk assessment is very important here. The operator or the airline can accept that kind of passenger according to the risk assessment. How safe is that passenger?
Yes.
What will happen if this passenger is on board that aircraft? Is this passenger very aggressively? Is this passenger going with the escort or not the escort? Even if he's going with the escort, how many people are required to be on board the aircraft? These passengers, are they going with those escorts? Are they going with their firearms on board, or they are not going with their firearms of God? If they are going with their firearms, it means there is another security measures need to be implemented in place. It's not easy, and their number is to be restricted. That's why it's most of states, sometimes if the number of the deportee or the prisoners, it's big. That's why sometimes they charter planes. They don't mix them with the passengers, because they are dangerous. They are dangerous. Okay, let me take an example. This is a deportee, and it's an escort deportee. The information must be passed to the airline during the booking. Okay. And the airline must assess, study the case of that passengers, and then will decide if those passengers can go with their flight or not.
Yes.
Okay. Let's say it's accepted. Okay. Most of those kind of passengers, the restricted passenger, they don't come through the terminals where most of the passengers are there, because first of all, they will scaring all those passengers.
Yes.
Okay. That's why sometimes they will put them direct to the waiting area where they are alone there, or sometimes they will be direct from their vehicle to the aircraft. And always they board them fast. On board the aircraft and leave the aircraft last. Okay, it means once those passengers are coming, the normal passengers coming to board the aircraft, already they are on board, but they are being at the rear, where if those passengers even cannot understand what is going there. Okay. And they will be leaving last after the ordinary passengers left the plane. Okay. And with their escort, and it is very dangerous for them on board of the aircraft to deliver for them the services, except with the permission from the escorter, from those who are escorting them inside. Because sometimes maybe you can come and deliver for them something that required knife on board or whatever. They will use it in order to challenge people on board.
Yes.
It's very dangerous. Also, you cannot give them alcohol on board. Even the escort, people who are escorting them cannot take alcohol. Also, the deportees cannot take alcohol on board. That's why we say those are sensitive passengers, especially in airline. But it's not easy for them to be transported. It's not easy unless a certain requirements meet, and the risk assessment is always green.
Okay. All right. Yes, our time is 45 minutes after the hour of 3. Let's go through some of the questions and comments on Facebook. We have Martin Ball. He says, all the best. Billy Spoons, nice topic. We have Ring Molana, and he says, I'm Ring Molana, watching live in Kwajo, Kwarab State. My question is, why a breastfeeding mother who is traveling with her child of 5 months is being charged, yet the child will not sit, does not have a seat? Better to charge the mother only. Okay, we have Siri James. She says, good topic. And let's also see. Okay, we have Thomas Laku. I'm Thomas Laku, watching live from Gudele. My question is, in case a parent entrusts his or her child to travel with a passenger he knows on board, is it recommended as per procedure? And there is also Wisla Martins watching live from Gorom Refugee Settlement. We have James Juma Alfred. He says, thanks iRadio. For passengers with reduced mobility, how do airlines manage the payment? Is it considered normal fare? Yes. And yes. Okay. We have one last one from Thomas Laku as well. Due to health issues of a passenger, PIC decide to offload the passenger. Who is liable for the ticket of the passenger, the airline or the passenger? Yeah. But Caesar, let's start with passengers with how can you entrust your child with the passenger you know on board, and is it recommended as per procedure? This is for unaccompanied children. Maybe we start with that question.
Those are very beautiful questions. Okay, you know, excellent. An accompanied passenger or accompanied child
yes,
always is the responsibility of the airlines. Is the full responsibility of the airline. But in case you don't want to follow these procedures of an accompanied child, maybe let me say you are traveling barrier and I know you. Yeah, I can able to say, barrier, take care of what? Take care of my child until reaching the point of what? Of destinations. Here it's okay. It's not the responsibility of the airlines, but now this is the responsibility of you. The responsibility of you taking care of what? Of that child.
Of the child, yes.
That is always. But the airline cannot come and say, barrier, please take care of this kid. No. The airline, this is their responsibility. But they always help, they always brief passenger who are sitting near what? Sitting near that unaccompanied child. Please, in terms of an emergency, the face masks, the oxygen masks, you can use, giving them a full demonstration about the emergency. Because in case of an emergency, someone who is just close to that passenger can able to help that child. Maybe cabin crew is in another zone. Okay, this is 1. 2, on board that aircraft, it's the responsibility of the cabin crew also to take care of that child.
Yes.
Okay, fasten whatever, but it's full responsibility. But if the arrangement done traditional way, let me say traditional way, this is the responsibility of the parents of the child, because it doesn't communicate to the airline.
Okay. Also, looking at this question from Quer, who says, James Juma, he is asking about, for passengers with reduced mobility, how do airline manage the payment? Is it the same payment with the rest of the passengers?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, airlines, they also consider a type of conditions. Some airlines can charge more. Example, passenger with reduced mobility and required stretcher. It mean, you know, to install the stretcher, you can take at least 4 chairs out. It means 2 rows of the chairs, of the seats. Okay, of the seats. This means the charges will be more. Okay, but airlines sometimes I will say it depends on the airlines. Sometimes they consider the situation. Sometimes they will make some discounts, okay, by let me 10%, 20% out of that, depend on the airlines situations. But in some situation they can pay more, even they can pay double, depend on the case of them disabled or the disability passengers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We also have another comment from Guer Alongomi Bull. She says, very important topic. Thanks to iRadio, our people are less aviation informed. That aircraft is not like vehicle on the ground. Every airline usually have air medical doctors. Okay, that's according to her. And also, let's look at the question from Thomas Laku. He says, due to health issues of a passenger, the PIC decides to offload the passenger. Who is liable for the charge for the ticket of the passenger, the airline or the passenger?
Okay, if the offload happen before departure, there is no any charges here.
Yes.
But if, let me say, the aircraft take off and the situation change in the air, and the aircraft divert back to the point of destination, 200%, there will not be any charge. This is an emergency. You are requesting someone. The charges always come for those kind of passengers that I say before, which is the restricted passengers. Let's say the inadmissible passengers. Okay, they reach destinations, but they are rejected to enter the country because they have fixed visa. Here they are responsible of their return ticket home.
Yes.
They will be charged. But with those, let me say, ill passengers, injury passengers, situation change, it's a must for this aircraft to come back to the base to offload that passenger. Let me say death on board. Passenger die on the way before reaching the destination. The aircraft can come back, but the airline cannot claim for the family that you need to pay because I come back. No.
Okay.
Only with those restricted passengers, which I mean the prisoners, deportees, and the inadmissible passengers.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Caesar.
There is a good question about the breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I don't know
why.
Yeah, that one is a very good question.
Yes. So he is asking that in case let's go to that question. He's asking, when a pregnant mother is when a woman is pregnant, why is she charged? I think according to him extra because the child is still not yet born. So
that's great. No, they are not charging extra. Even if she's pregnant, they charge the same ticket. But if the baby is now out, they will charge for the baby.
Okay.
But they will not charge the baby or the infant the rate or according what you are charging the adult. I think the ticket may be 15% of the adult ticket.
Okay.
It will be something less. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we are left with a few minutes to be finishing with our program. Caesar, lastly, I would love you to share your final message with the listeners and also those who are watching live on Facebook. We have people who are listening to us online. What message do you have for them if in case they fall in any category of these passengers? You mentioned about transparency and communication earlier. In case you have a passenger or you are a passenger in these categories we discussed today, so what message do you have for them?
Yeah, thanks very much, Barry, and thanks for those watching us and listening to us. My advice for the passengers that falls under those categories, or if you are parents with such kind of situations, please, in order not to interrupt your flight, you need to make sure that whatever we discuss in the studio of iRadio must be available before you plan your flight. You need to have a medical clearance from your doctor, depend on the situation where the passenger is suffering. You need to have a proper document for your traveling. Okay, even if it's a referee from your homeland to the abroad or to your neighboring country, you need to have a referee on that one. You need to communicate earlier, at least 48 hours or 72 hours minimum. Okay, don't hide whatever you are suffering, because some people, they are hiding. That's why we say the hidden disabilities. Don't hide everything, tell it out, because once you tell it out, they can able to control your situation in the air when something goes abroad or
Yes.
something goes beyond the control.
Yeah.
Okay, this is just my advice for them, and we love or to help them and let them be always from 3 to 4 and listens more informations, and their questions are most welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Caesar Gubang, and thanks to those who dropped their questions and comments on our Facebook Live, and to you who has been listening. I hope we all benefited from this information. Of course, this very program aims to give you the aviation general knowledge. From me, Barry Johnson, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will meet again next Saturday with a different aviation topic and another aviation expert in the studio.
أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران بيقدم لك البرنامج الإذاعي اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران. البرنامج ده بيزودك بكل المعلومات المهمة واللي انت بتحتاج تعرفه عن مجال الطيران. اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران بيجيكم كل يوم السبت الساعة 3 بالمساء على الهواء وعلى الإنترنت فقط على أي راديو.